Hello, hello, testing, testing. Good afternoon, everyone joining already. So perfectly on time. I think we can start. I started by sharing my screen. I'm looking at the camera, but I don't see my camera. That's okay. So at the end, we'll have some time for questions. But we'll start with a brief introduction of what Fontra is and why it is there, and where we are in making it. Let me briefly check. I think everything is good to go in terms. So we're recording this session. If everything goes well, it will be posted on YouTube soon after. Fontra, what is it? We call it a browser-based font editor. It doesn't mean it's necessarily an online font editor, but it runs mostly in the browser. There's also an application that is the server part of it, and that can either run locally or can run remotely. Today, we will focus on the version of Fontra that we call Fontra Pak, which is an application for local use. We'll still use the browser to do the work, but nothing ever leaves your computer that way. Everything is totally local. We've refreshed the fontra.xyz website just a little bit. If you're interested more about how Fontra is constructed from a software perspective or a modularity perspective, I recommend you to go through the PDF. I work for Black Foundry, making it possible through all the work that they have. But what I would like to demo, what is new on the website, is that we have direct download links to fresh versions. This is actually 1 day behind because we're having an issue at GitHub that I just discovered. So this is a version from yesterday, just to show you how easy it will be to set up. I just clicked the link and it's downloading. See, earlier attempts are here, almost done. Once it's done, I will just open that link. It will open a DMG, and we can take the application, drop it on our applications. Well, of course, I already had one, but I will replace it. Oh, I cannot because I forgot to quit the old one. Demo. Okay, so let me try again. Replace. This should be better. So that went pretty quickly. Don't need this anymore. And yeah, now I have installed Fontra. I have an alias here that I can click that will start the same thing. Fontra Pak, I must say. So the first time you open it, once you've downloaded, you get this message. Hey, you downloaded this from the internet. Are you sure? Well, it's nicely notarized and signed, so it's all trustworthily built, at least for macOS. The same thing should work for Windows, but I must say it's far less tested, so there might be some snags here and there. Anyway, when you open the Fontra Pak application, you get this little window. I noticed now that in my introduction, I completely skipped past the thing I wanted to say about why Fontra exists. Let me see. I was so well prepared. So at Black Foundry, there are many large projects that involve many people. Some of those projects involve East Asian character sets, so many characters, and therefore also larger teams of designers. And they were looking for a better way to collaborate. That's part of Fontra's history. There are some predecessors. There's a thing called a RoboCJK, which is an extension for RoboFont that is still used a little bit, but Fontra is largely replacing that. At the same time, Fontra is also becoming a more and more general purpose font editor. And while it can still become an online application for others to use, right now we have an internal online version that I will demonstrate very briefly later on. But like I said, today we're going to focus on Fontra Pak, which is just an application that you install on your computer, and it has a single window and you can drop font files on here. So while there are some formats it can read and not write, such as TrueType, OTF, and even with some limitations, Glyphs and Glyphs package, what it can read and write is UFO, mostly UFO and design space. So To start a demo, I will open a existing design space. This is the Brillante typeface by Black Foundry, a retail typeface. Once you've dropped a design space file or a UFO on the application, then you will be greeted with this single test word, and you are in the application. Now, what we should remember, I can switch back to the application. We should not quit the application, because even though part of the application is running inside the browser, this application is more than just this window. It's actually running a little local web server that is only visible on the local machine. It's not visible outside of the local machine, but this kind of communicates between the browser, and it takes care of writing files to disk and reading. So that is the first entry point for Fontra Pak. Very broadly, the state of development, it's like announced, it's still a work in progress. We've been working on it for, I think, about 2 years now. It's still work in progress. There's many things that are becoming more and more featureful. It is not yet a tool that can replace your other font editor. It is not complete in terms of features. We're working very hard to make it more and more feature complete. We will be focusing on more general purpose features in the next few months, but still it will take time. And so for now, Fontra Pak is, for instance, useful as a companion to another font editor, say RoboFont. I mean, that is the most obvious choice, because Fontra Pak, Fontra here works very well with design space and UFO-based things. So yeah, let me go through the list of things that I wanted to show. So we opened a design space file. So we are now in a window with a canvas. We added text, and we can zoom in or out with the trackpad. I'll just go through the user interface elements. We can zoom in or out. This bullseye icon makes the selection, makes you zoom to the selection, if any. We can click on an individual glyph and it becomes selected, and if we would then use it, it would zoom to that element. If we click to another one, we would easily quickly navigate to that other one. But again, I'm mostly using the trackpad on my laptop, which works pretty smoothly. There is a full screen mode that I will use it for a little bit. So you can always exit it. So let's see what happens if we double click a glyph. Then we get into so-called edit mode. We can still scroll, zoom, and we can select points with the rectangle, or we can click on them. We can shift click to or shift rectangle click, and we can move those things around. Of course, I made a very bad selection because there's a bunch of points really close together here. Let me see those if I just zoom in really wildly. So yeah, these points are only 2 units apart. So there's a unit grid visible if you zoom in far enough. If it's getting too small, it disappears. But you have, if you zoom in far enough, you have a overview of where the unit grid is. So with your arrow keys, you can navigate if you want. And also at the moment, any edit will actually snap on the grid. So you can kind of see that move things around. So yeah, editing multiple things. It has the usual behaviors. I will go into a bit more detail soon. What time is it? Yeah. I need to show a bit more about what's going on here. The first one is the text entry field, and this here is the text. When you go out of full screen mode, that somehow so here we can type. Let me just if you double click outside, you deselect, the glyph goes out of edit mode. So double clicking on a glyph, enter edit mode, double click elsewhere, you exit edit mode. Anyway, so we can type a text here. This includes things like we can common reads it. I cannot type, of course. Is there no? Anyway, maybe glyph names are typable. Let's say dollar. That's one that works. So, but here, yeah, multi-line text. Zoom out more. So there's no real limit here. You can have, you can zoom out pretty far. You can have a lot of text. Some basic alignment options. And anywhere we can click and zoom to that selection, double click to go into enter mode, edit mode. To select individual glyphs, we can go to the Find Glyphs panel. Here you get an overview of all the glyphs that are in this particular font by name, and you see a generic representation of the character. We can also filter here by glyph name, or we can search by character. And and if we would click here, then the currently selected glyph will be replaced with the one that we see here. So this is another way to navigate the text that we're looking at. So text-based text entry, glyph-based text entry. Let me clear that filter. So yeah, we see the character, the glyph name, and the Unicode, if any. Of course, we can deal with unencoded characters as well, unencoded glyphs, I should say. So to the edit tool. So I showed the navigation tools here. Well, this is actually also part of navigation. There's a hand tool. I generally just use the scroll gestures on my trackpad. We have here the general selection tool that allows us to select points and to move them around. This is what we call the pen tool. It doesn't look like a pen, but it has a little plus on it, which signifies that we will add stuff to the glyph. So now I'm drawing in this glyph that's being selected. By just clicking, I'm adding just straight line segments. By the way, undo is just supported, as you would expect. If the pen tool, maybe I should show also, okay, I will go a little bit deeper into the pen tool. I will briefly show the measurement tool. This is derived from a tool called Power Ruler, developed at Black Foundry. You click somewhere and it finds the closest point on the line and draws a perpendicular line all across your glyph, and you get these measurements that obviously will update live. So this is the measurement tool. We should go into the pen tool more soon. Wait, before I go drawing stuff, there's another important panel, because as you noticed, I opened a, oh, by the way, yeah, if you want to get, we're in the ruler tool. If you want to hide the ruler tool, then you can double click and it will be gone for now. You can always, if you click again, it will appear again, but you can relatively easily switch back and forth. So other panels, we've had the text panel, the text entry, but here is, I opened the design space file. So yeah, Fontra is really made to build variable fonts from the ground up. So while we can open individual UFOs, that's practically not what we're doing. We're generally opening a design space file, which implicitly opens all the associated UFOs right there. So if I quickly go back to the Finder, I opened this design space file, which references all these UFOs, but generally I just, in Fontra, I open the design space file and I have access to all of those. So here we have the so-called source list, and we see this is generally something that is per glyph, because not every glyph needs to define the same set of sources or masters, if you will. We tend to call sources, they call them sources. So these should correspond to the UFOs that we saw in Finder. But yeah, this is an interpolatable system, so the sliders will allow you to live interpolate anywhere you want. Now, editing has to be done at a source, so we need to either navigate to a specific source, or if we just somewhere and we see something like, hey, we want to edit here. If we try that, we're not at a source, we will get a dialog. Hey, we can't edit the glyph number D because the location is not at a source. The usual thing to do is then to go, well, show me where is the nearest source. Well, it happens to be regular condensed. So now I can do my editing in this particular source. So that's where I will go. Okay, I think I have one. Okay, let me see. We have the. I see I have an optional behavior accidentally turned on that I didn't want to. But anyway, so this is the. I will go into a little bit more detail about what all these things mean. I will briefly go onto the gear tab, which gives us some options regarding visualization, but also behavior. And the one that is by default off that I accidentally still had on was the scaling edit tool behavior. I will turn that off. We can talk about more details back later, but now I have a more default feeling way of how the editing works. So yeah, we can edit anywhere we want. The pen tool also doubles as a slice tool. We will make a knife tool at some point, but at the moment with the pen tool, if you hover over other areas, like if you hover over a curve, we can insert a point here. Or if we go on a straight line and we press the Alt key and then click, it will insert handles here. So we can turn, that way we can turn a straight line into a curve. Vice versa, if we delete those, then it becomes a straight line again. Deleting points works mostly like you would expect, so it tries to follow the curve as possible. Of course, it's not always possible if you delete too many points. There's, I don't know this typeface very well, but indeed there are 2 points really close together, like only 1 unit apart. So that's indeed what we see happening here. So deleting points, adding points, but I added a point. Wait, let me undo a bit further. Right, so notice what will happen in this second column here. I will add a point, and all of a sudden there is this little red bug icon. It's tiny, but it's a little bug. It's we find it very cute. This shows that now this source is no longer compatible with the rest. So now yeah, our interpolation also no longer works. So it will try to snap at the nearest that's possible, but it's currently not a viable interpolatable system. We can disable a source. In some cases that is effective. So if I double click this one here, we kind of temporarily disable this source, and then the rest of the system, then now this master, this source no longer participates. So we can kind of check what happens in the design space if this one just wasn't there. So, but yeah, if it's enabled, then of course we have a problem. We cannot interpolate, and we need to fix that. We can click on this thing, and it gives us a little message, which at the moment is pretty much useless. It's a very generic thing, but this is an area where we expect to make improvements, that you can get a more detailed message of what makes this particular source incompatible with the others. So, but yeah, so to undo this, either I will undo or I will just delete this point. It should go to the nearest source. Where am I here? Oh, accidentally deselected. So it should be interpolatable again, and there we are. So interpolation, I need to check. We only have this much time. So every once in a while, I will check the time and where we are. This is navigating. We've done the ruler. I'm already, of course, a little bit behind. So I mentioned that Fontra can read TTF, OTF, and that includes variable fonts. I will not demo that now, but it's, I mean, it will look like you're in an editor, but it will not save changes. So a little warning for that. Likewise, so we can read the glyph format to some extent. I will just drop this particular demo font, no, not there, but here on my Fontra Pak. And this font only contains a handful of glyphs. So here we see missing glyphs being shown. This is a test font from the Glyphs test suite. So anyway, This is read directly from a Glyphs file. We can navigate it, and even this gives me also a nice opportunity to demonstrate the info panel, which gives us, apart from some information of the glyph itself and the dimensions of the current selection, it gives information about components. That's its main role at the moment, is to give information about components. And in this particular test case, we're actually looking at a smart component in Glyphs. This is something that is fully supported in Fontra. We more or less support a superset of that. In Fontra, we can do, if there's time left, I will talk a little bit about variable components later. It's a rather specific topic. But yeah, reading from a Glyphs file, the same would work from a variable TTF or static TTF or variable OTF or static OTF. So we can just inspect. What Fontra does not do is currently is features and kerning. So it's relatively primitive in what we at the moment can show in the canvas area. So about creating, I will now, so instead of editing existing glyphs, I will now insert what I will create a new glyph. If I would type, well, I could type a character that doesn't exist, but you know, I don't know offhand in this particular font which Latin characters do not exist. So I will just enter an arbitrary a glyph name that I know does not exist. So / glyph name, and I see it here. It shows the glyph name. If this were a glyph name that would map to a character, it would also show the character. Anyway, so this is not yet an existing glyph. It's a placeholder, but I can double click it, and then we get a dialog. Do we want to create this glyph? Well, let's say yes. So now I have a glyph, and it's in edit mode, and I can draw stuff in this glyph. So, so this is a good moment to talk a bit more about the pen tool. So I've been clicking around so we can add things. If you click back on the original point, we close the contour, and that a contour is closed, you see by the fact that it's filled in light gray. Undo works. Let me show you a bit more, because I just clicked, but if we click drag, we will get a handle. And of course, we can apply shift to constrain it. Further on, we can also, I'm using shift to constrain. So we can, at the same time, if we now decide we now want a straight line, I can click again on the last handle. And you see this little highlight. This means that if I click it, it will delete the handle. So I'll click it now, and gone is the handle, and I can continue with straight lines. Likewise, if I went here and I want a, well, actually, in this case, I can just click drag, and it will create a handle. Likewise here, but for instance here, maybe I don't want another curve here, so I click this here, and so I can click here, and now I have closed the contour. So those are the main properties of our pen tool. It covers everything. It works quite a bit different than most other pen tools, so maybe it will take some getting used to. Also, of course, we're working on making things better. This is also a good moment to so here currently this is a non-smooth point. It's not a tangent, but I can, and that's kind of a common thing, at least in RoboFont. If you double click a node, it will turn on the smooth flag. So now it's a proper tangent. If I would double click it again, it would be a non-smooth curve again, and it will correct the things. So yeah, we can, the most obvious constraints are there. There's a couple of interesting additional features. If you drag this point and you will hold Alt, it will actually move the anchor point between the two others. This also works for this particular case. If I Alt click here, I can move it exactly on that line that exists. If we do that on a point like this, it will just leave the handle alone, so we can move like the anchor independently of the handle. So by default, it will move the handle, but if I press Alt, it will leave it where it was. There's Alt has another bunch of interesting features, like if I drag this one, this is your normal behavior, but now with adding Alt, I can make it move like this. Shift also applies. Likewise here, this works similarly here. This is without Alt, this is with Alt. The opposite direction as well. Normally this would constrain here, of course, in the tangent direction, but if I press Alt, it tries always to keep the constraint if possible. So the Alt behavior is kind of a neat thing that's, I think, is rather non-standard compared to other pen tools or other editing tools. So yeah, I've shown inserting points. We can, with the pen tool, so we can insert points if we want. There's also, we have an extensive contextual menu for right-click or control-click. Undo menu and copy and paste are available there, but there's the typical break contour available. We can break it apart. And let's break here. So, and we can connect things by dragging them towards each other. So now I've connected. By the way, if you want to continue drawing, if you just select an endpoint, we can continue drawing right away. So this would also allow us to close this thing. So now we have a weird contour. So breaking contours, joining contours in the contextual menu, you will always also find reverse contour. We can add a component. We can set a start point. So your basic things you can find there. Yeah, copy paste works to some extent. I mean, we're working around a little bit with browser limitations, like because this is all running in a standard web browser, and what the browser has access to in terms of clipboard material depends a bit per browser, and also what we can export and what we can read is a little bit limited. But by default, Fontra will put the glyph format on the clipboard. So if I copy this shape, copy, I hit copy Command C, and if I go to RoboFont, brand new RoboFont 4, all shiny pen, didn't make a mistake, I can paste my shape here, and there it is. And this also goes the other way. There's limited copy paste available between Glyphs and Fontra. The limitation is because that goes through the SVG format. And SVG format is not really good at keeping the original positions. But likewise, I mean, I can edit things here. Let's see, and copy, paste it back. So I pasted, edit the thing that I edited. Okay, I made a big mess now, but I think you got my point. So likewise, yeah. Oh yeah, for instance, we in Fontra we do not have remove overlap here, so potentially we could quickly go to RoboFont, go back to so with copy paste, we can move things around. However, things get better. What happened here? Okay, it's a connection like that, of course, because why? So I am quickly running out of time, but I still want to show a little bit more about how Fontra can work side by side with RoboFont. Let's see. I need to see on which source was I. Oh, it's the default, so it should be. I drew this in the regular source, so this it should be this. I'm going to just open a single source. And here we have the same font, but then there's the single source. And if I would scroll all the way to the end, I should find my, my testing glyph, and there it is. So indeed, it's just, so as you've noticed, I did not, or maybe I haven't, but I did not press save. Fontra does not have a save button. If I change here something now, it saves immediately, or at least as fast as it can, which is pretty fast. But then if we go back to RoboFont, RoboFont notices that, hey, update found, and we do an update, and there's my edit. Vice versa, and now I should rearrange my windows a little bit. So this is Fontra in the background, RoboFont in the foreground. If I make an edit here, no change, but in RoboFont we do have to press save. I press save, Command S right now, boom, and Fontra notices also, but since it synchronizes with disk immediately, it doesn't need this confirmation like, hey, change on disk, because it knows like we're up to date, and it updates. So yeah, we can edit in RoboFont, see the results in Fontra, and vice versa. Here, update. What did I do? I pressed the wrong button somewhere. Anyway, so yeah, undo, and again, update. Likewise, the same actually happens. That's as a brief aside. It's also, we can also use it as a companion app to Font Goggles. Font Goggles is obviously the read-only application. This is a fairly large project, so it will take a while to load all those masters and load it. But Font Goggles opens Design Space also directly, just like, and okay, there we are, make it a little bigger. But Font Goggles also listens to changes on disk. So if I go to this cap A, okay, where are we? There we are. So I think we're looking at the default here. So if I make an edit here, let's mess it up, and Font Goggles also responds to that. So pretty much as soon as it can, it will. And Font Goggles obviously does show kerning and all the features, so could be, at least on macOS, be a nice companion to Fontra. Let's see. So this, but likewise, I mean, here Font Goggles shows the Design Space thing as if it's already a variable font, the same as Fontra does. So we can navigate to similar places, and let's see, can we make this edit here? And yeah, we can kind of see the effect in the intermediates. Okay, I'm messing things up really badly now. Anyway, so I have, because I'm already 32 minutes, a couple more important things to show. Let's see. No, I will stay here. Let's get a nice lowercase letter here, and let's go to the source list. I mean, I have to, well, let's put it in edit mode, zoom out a little bit. So we've seen this on-off button and the compatibility column, which generally, when you see nothing there, all is good. We have an interpolatable system. There is here a column with a little I, and here we can show like which sources should always be visible in the background. We can also click in the header. This makes everything visible or invisible. This shows us all the sources in the background. However, you might also have noticed that once we're at a source, then you see a little edit thing. On the one hand, that means, yes, we can edit here, because if we're not at a source, we cannot edit here, and we'll have to go to a source. However, we can edit multiple sources at the same time, and we will see them as background things. Let's see. So, and also we can, so everything you can edit in Fontra, we can also edit through all the sources at the same time. So, for instance, let me select like this top part here. Let me move this up using Shift, and in all the UFOs associated here that I've selected, I mean, I could also only do a handful or one specific one or none, but it moves all relatively in the same way. This is a move, and of course, weird things will start happen if you move it around. This is the dancing typeface. That's so we can drag things in. I'm getting some noises maybe from the chat, or I will just check because I do not see the chat. I will read it later. But the thing is perhaps more useful. I mean, this editing stuff is, of course, you're large, even though you see what you're doing, it's a little bit blind in the other master. So I can imagine that that's not always super practical. However, to insert a point, this will also work across all masters. If I only do it in a single master, single source, like here, you will see now we have a bug because now this source is no longer compatible. But now let's do it in all sources at the same time. And here we are now, all sources, and I can relatively, there's with command arrow up and down, I can zap through all the sources, and you see it has inserted a point at an equivalent position. This is all relative and based on proportions. So if I would do the same on a straight line, like if we would look at this line segment here, if I would do it, say roughly here, maybe at 10% based on the length of this line segment, it will do it in all other sources also at 10%. So here, and we can still edit everything, and we see what's going on, and we can zap through the changes. This goes quite far, so it's not just editing, but also, for instance, to add a component. We can, let's add a little, what is it? Let's just mess it up. Let's add a graph component, and now I've added this one component, and I can also move it around all at the same time, because still all sources are in edit mode. I should also show now, so we see only the values in the info panel. This is the offset for the component. We only see the one in the main layer that we actually have selected. But yeah, so and likewise, we can change. One pretty cool thing is that if we've selected this component, we can actually edit the glyph name here. So if I want to replace this with an acute, I can just type here and enter, and now through all the sources, this component has become an acute. And undo is all still very much available and there, forward, backwards, by command keys or by menu. So I think that was a very important thing that I wanted to highlight. I should go to so yeah, the source list. Let me briefly go to my testing glyph and testing. What was it called here? I need to draw something. Let's draw something more. Okay, I need to go to the source. Let me just delete all this, and I will quickly draw a curveless thing because it's faster. Because here, if you've noticed, I only have one source. But now, for instance, I want to draw a bolt. We don't have a bolt yet. Well, we navigate to bolt. I mean, we are thinking of idea of making this UI better, but we navigate to that location. Then we click plus and we add a source. We could customize the source name. We could fine-tune the axis values, but let's just stick with this. And now we've inserted a source at this location that I can now edit. So this is a bolt, so let's make it bolder. And instantly I have an interpolating shape. Likewise, so yeah, okay, this shape is a little stupid for a width axis, but let's imagine the width axis goes up. Let's first go back to the neutral, and then oh wait, I actually did it in the sorry, the width. So this font goes narrow. So let me add and let's pretend this is not really narrow. So let's insert this, and instead of making it narrow, I'm just going to make it taller. So now on this axis, we would have a taller, still an interpolatable system, and look, this is also still working, and we also still have the combination. So we do not have a narrow bolt at the moment, but yeah, this is only a rectangle, so it's pretty trivial, but we can still now navigate to this bold narrow and add another source, and let's tweak this. So for instance here, this one needs to be like this. Anyway, etc. This is how you can gradually build a design space for an individual glyph. So of course, if you have pre-planned everything, you may want to have predefined sources, and that is something we're working on. So multi-source editing. Yeah, okay, we actually, I would have some more topics, but just as a general notice, we plan to do this every month, roughly at the end of the month, maybe always on a Friday. However, we will probably do it at different times. So sometimes, I mean, we're in Europe and Western Europe, so we might like sometimes do it early in the morning, so more Asian people can join, or later in the evening, so more America's people can join. So that may vary. Always we want to publish the recording. Before we go over to the question and answer section, yeah, okay, there's a section that I've planned. What's next for Fontra? What are the things that we are working on and that we are planning for the next few months? Well, so maybe one of the things that you've seen that is missing is proper background layers. We do not have support for guidelines yet. We do not have support for anchors yet. I mean, that's stuff that is really important and that we want to implement as soon as possible. Also, like the vertical metrics like ascender, descender, cap height, and customizable things that comes together with guidelines. Likewise, you might have noticed that we do not have a font overview. That's perhaps a little curious. That's kind of coming from our main use case, which is Asian fonts, and those tend to be so large that this overview, you cannot see everything in a meaningful way, in a very easy way. So we have ideas to kind of make finding and selecting and sorting glyphs based on properties or Unicode values more easy, but this is roughly where at the moment we find searching glyphs very important based on glyph name or based on character. That does not mean that we will not make a font overview. We definitely will, but so far, because of the context in which this project evolves, sometimes if you look at it from the outside, it may look like our priorities are all weird and wrong. And yeah, that's probably correct from where you're standing. But you know, this project evolves within actual use. While I'm talking this, I will very briefly show our private online deployment. So we have an online. I'm now not looking at Fontra as Fontra Pak, but this is literally an online thing. This is not a public thing. This is an internal website that requires, but this is some test data based on Chinese characters. And here we also see our variable components principle that is very similar to smart components, as I mentioned before. But here we have also things like the CJK design frame. Okay, in this demo font, this test font is not set up properly, so these margins are all wrong. But there are some specific CJK features available, and this we have, I mean, this to some extent also works with Fontra Pak, but we have this URL. Let me briefly go back to the tab where I'm in Fontra Pak. Even though I should really switch to the question and answer section. So imagine I've typed A, B, C, D, F, and you know, I'm editing here, and I want to open a second window. What I do is I go to the address bar of the browser, I copy the URL. I could even go to a different browser on my computer and paste the URL, and there I go to the exact same place. I mean, generally you would use the same browser. I mean, it works in the same browser, so I can just here. Let me start it again. And these tabs or windows will actually respond live to one another. So I can do an edit here, and you will see it respond in the other window. Now, to some extent, we have this working in a more collaborative way. So this is a more large-scale collaborative environment. But this URL idea, so I can just go to, and these are shareable across colleagues. So if one colleague is working on a glyph or notices something, hey, there's something wrong here, please, dear colleague, could you have a look what's going on here? Then they can just share the URL, and that's where they go. And this includes the design space location. So where we are, I will not look at that CGK. This is really not reliable. This is test data that I keep messing up. So, but anyway, so that is a feature that becomes more useful outside of Fontra Pak. So Fontra Pak is pretty much just one way how we use Fontra. So yeah, our near-term goals is to make it more and more useful for the general case to make. Yeah, I think I mentioned the important things, so that it will become more useful for more and more tasks. And yeah, I think, okay, so we set up a side channel. I'm looking at my phone now, And our editorial team is now finding the questions from the chat that I cannot see. The first question is, I hope that Fontra is also compatible with Windows. Yes, it is. With some caveats, it's so if I go to, I mentioned it at the beginning, the Fontra homepage, fontra.xyz, we have Fontra Pak for macOS and the Fontra Pak for Windows. However, there are some, it's less well tested, and but the intention is that it should be equally well supported. Practically, that's a little more difficult for us because at Black Foundry and in my personal studio, we don't use a whole lot of Windows, so it might be lagging behind, but that's definitely an important goal for us. So likewise, it's not, I've been demoing in Chrome, but that's completely irrelevant. We need relatively new browsers. It will not work on an old Safari, for instance, and on older OSs. But we strive to support the main browsers. That includes Chromium-based browsers, Safari and Firefox. And yeah, so it should be, we have an automated update system. At the moment, we've hit a snag. This should have read October 20. But yeah, on weekdays, every day we have a new build that incorporates the latest changes. We try very hard to keep this stable, but we do not have formal releases yet because, you know, it's moving sometimes fast, sometimes slower. So, a good question from Rafael Buchner. What are your plans for making Fontra scriptable? I have no super easy answer for that. We currently, inside Black Foundry, we use a bit of, we use Python scripting to control the font backends. It's how can I explain this? I mean, we have, so inside Fontra in the front end here in the browser, we do not yet have any scripting possibilities directly. But there are ways to use Fontra code to automate things. We want more scripting for sure. What we're focusing right now also, and a good question for that because I forgot to mention it, we're working on various plugin APIs that people can provide plugins, initially just written in JavaScript, or well, pretty much any web technology, but we will allow external plugins to be used. So we're building a plugin manager page where you can say like, hey, there's a plugin hosted over there, please use it here. So we're opening up third-party development in that way, pretty much as we speak. I mean, still lots of work ahead of us to make that smooth. So yeah, with web technology, there's more and more, with WebAssembly, other languages become more and more available on the web platform. Like it's currently possible to I'm not talking about Fontra, but in general in the web world, it's possible to load a complete Python interpreter into the browser and use Python relatively natively in the browser. So we could connect that to Fontra at some point and even have Python scripting available right in the browser. That is a pretty ambitious thing, so I'm not expecting that in the next couple months. There's UFO-Z is asked. There's currently no support for UFO-Z. That's the zip thing that could work, but you know, the whole live updating, live saving, the regular or totally ordinary UFO format is way more suitable for that. So the UFO-Z format is, I mean, we could support it, but it is not a super well-suited format. So it's probably better to have like the zipping up of your UFO stuff as a separate thing. Our friend Dave Crossman is asking how to Rust. Well, likewise, I mean, you can probably have a WebAssembly stuff inside the browser. I don't know much about Rust, but yeah, the Google Font people are working very hard on better, faster font compilers written in Rust that should be way faster than the current Python-based tools, and it's definitely on our wish list to at some point incorporate that into Fontra so that we would have fast font generating component integrated into Fontra. So that is indeed also a good question in the sense that we currently do not have a generate fonts button. Yeah, so that's hopefully that answers that. Are there more questions that I should? Well, that's not a lot of questions. What else can I show? Thanks for your attention, for sure. That's I really appreciate all of you who tuned in to this nice little live. The question is, can you delete glyphs? That is indeed like a missing feature that has been a high priority for a while, but it's coming very soon. So delete glyphs, no. And that's then, you know, so that would also work across the whole design space. So deleting a glyph would mean to delete it from all associated UFOs. So that's indeed a useful feature as well. So deleting glyphs. So yeah, again, if you tuned in later, the Fontra XYZ is our improvised homepage. It provides the links to it's actually a collection of repositories at the moment. There's links to the main one, but there's a bunch of secondary repositories. So the slides document gives you an overview of how Fontra was constructed. Very good question. Can you start a new file from scratch instead of editing an existing file? I was hoping to have that working for today's demo, but I missed that deadline. So right now we cannot start with from nothing. However, so at this moment, and this is the bare minimum that we need to start is an empty UFO and a design space file. I'm not gonna, a design space file that references at the default source. So this is actually an example. Where's my app? I will just very briefly. So this is an empty project that has what's not empty. We're also still working on. So this has 2 axes predefined, but it contains 0 glyphs. So here we have to make everything. So let me just A, B, C. So I can create, I can draw. And all of a sudden, now we do have an A. So yeah, and then we can populate the design space by maybe drawing a light version of this same wonderful glyph. There's the light version, and here we go. So yeah, starting from scratch is still something we're working on. Possibly it will be a button in the Fontra Pak application, like start new project. Yeah, so good question. Is there a published roadmap that we can follow? There's 2 things that are both not ideal, but that you can follow. So let me briefly just go to the main GitHub repository. So please start that stuff if you have a GitHub account. Yay! Like and subscribe. We have in the README we have a section called Roadmap, and that has we keep that up to date. I mean, it's not a super complete list. The things with a green check mark have been implemented. The things without is stuff that is on our list. So that is like the rough overview of where you can see what kind of things we do support and what we do not yet support. If it's on the roadmap, it's definitely something that we're aware of that is missing. Then the second thing is that we have, of course, many open issues, and we can filter by core feature. So this is an important, what we consider a core feature is what we need to support before we pretty much can actually call it the font editor for real. So there's a whole bunch of things that we're aware of that Fontra is currently lacking in. So those 2 things you can follow. Yeah, we encourage you to play around within what it can do now. If you find bugs and you're a developer, we welcome bug fixes. At the moment, we're not actively seeking out third-party contributions because many internals have many moving parts. I'm not going to say a hard no at all. I'm just saying we're not super actively seeking that out. We're working with a small team within Black Foundry to build things. It's not only me who is working on this, so that's good news. But yeah, it's a big project, and we are very ambitious, and we have high demands on the quality of the features, and so, and also, like I tried to allude before, we're actually within Black Foundry, we're using it for production work. There's real design being made with this tool. And of course, and that's the context within which Fontra is developed. So whenever something is broken for them, that goes to the top of the priority immediately, and that will be fixed right away. When they have feature requests that will make their work, and there's a bunch of open feature requests from our internal teams that very often get priority over more general purpose features. But right now, we really want to balance that out a bit more, and that we really will be able to more focus also on the features that will make it a more generally useful tool. Okay, so let's see. So 2 roadmaps. Yeah. Good question. Another from Rafal Buchner. Whether we support the latest design space format. The answer to that is yes and no. The yes is that if you have a design space 5 format file that does not use discretionary access, what's it called, then it works, but it currently will fail in a rather user-unfriendly way if you indeed feed it a discretionary access, like an italic access that has 2 values, that is not an interpolating. So that's something we are very much aware of. That is has been pushed up on our internal priority list already a few times, but it's still not there. But yeah, that is something that we would love to support soon. So design space 5 properly with discretionary axes. I would say we should be able to support that by the end of the year. So there's a whole bunch of things that we would like to achieve by the end of the year, of course. But this is one of those things that I really feel has and should have discrete access. That's the word. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Cosimo. I must say, I'm getting this delayed, manually edited. Hi, Cosimo. Discrete access, that's the word, you know. So we have a couple minutes left. I don't want to really go over time. People at Black Foundry will try to save the chat, and we are recording the transcript. Not a lot of editing should be. When kerning supporters. One more question, Rafal, you're on a roll. When kerning support is coming, well, that is not coming this year. So that is something probably rather for the 2024. It's super important. So my ideal situation would be that we would integrate a lot of font goggles functionality regarding design space files and UFO files into Fontra itself, so that shaping live compilation of features, that's the kind of idea that I'm going for. But again, that's a super ambitious idea. We should definitely make some progress in this direction in 2024, but that's unlikely to see any improvement, I would say, before the end of the year. Good question. If you find bugs, our issue tracker is of course open once you have a GitHub account. Again, I want to highlight for the people who tuned in later, since very recently on our very low-key homepage, we have direct download links for Fontra Pak. That's a local application that I used for most of today's demo. And I will again repeat, it's also saying here, your font will stay on your computer and will not be uploaded anywhere. Just because Fontra Pak works with the browser doesn't mean that this is literally an online application. So while we also have an online version of Fontra, mostly internally at the moment, this might evolve into something public later, we don't know yet. But Fontra Pak is completely local and safe, and there's no spying going on from our end whatsoever. I mean, there's common misunderstanding. Okay, we're at the end of the time, so I think we should really wrap it up. Yeah, thank you all for your interest in Fontra. Play with it where you think that it could be perform some useful tasks within your workflow. If you find bugs or things that are unclear, you think something is misbehaving, feel free to either email me or open issue on GitHub, email us. We're open on all the usual channels. Tag me on Mastodon. I'm not so active on Twitter anymore, but yeah, I'm available. So thanks very much. And I will then stop sharing my screen for one. Thanks, everyone. And stop my camera, and slowly we'll stop talking. And Jeremy will be wrapping up the recording and the transcript. Thanks, everyone. And maybe see you next month. Will be announced in the same channels. Thanks so much.